All right. Recording in progress. Grand Rising, everybody. I am Amal. I'm your facilitator for this morning. This is the group Erace, and this is our Saturday meeting. Eracism is the slogan of the group Erace, which was formed in the city of New Orleans in the summer of 1993. We seek ways through person-to-person communication to show that we are committed to treating all human beings with love, respect, empathy, compassion, and humility. Join us. Erace is an organization that does not espouse any political party, and we have no religious affiliation. We believe in acceptance of all people, and no personal attacks of any kind will be tolerated. We come with intentions to listen, learn, and not to argue. This is the reading of the land acknowledgement. We begin today by acknowledging that what we know as the United States is ancestral land, unceded territory of many indigenous peoples, and that there are many nations and tribes that could not be named here. Members of our meeting group today are on the lands of the Chittimacha. Now, I'm going to mess up some of these names, so y'all forgive me. The Chittimacha and Choctaw in New Orleans, the Creek and the Cherokee in Atlanta. This is one of the names I might mess up, so y'all forgive me. The Tonkawan, Lipan, Apache and Comanche in Austin, the Lenape, and this is another one of those names I'm gonna mess up. Pitatawa, Piscataway, forgive me, y'all, in Washington, D.C. and metropolitan area, and the Wampanoag and the Nipmuc people in Boston, and Kalua, and the Mojave in Riverside, and Lumbee and Fayetteville. We thank the ancestors for being stewards of these lands through the generations and through today. We need to protect and honor the history and people of these places. Despite centuries of colonial theft and violence, we should always remember that we are all still on indigenous land, and it always will be indigenous land. These are the formats for the meeting. If you have a question, everybody will be given 2 minutes to speak as it relates to the topic. If you have any questions about something that someone said, and you can raise one finger if you want to get on the list. If you want to ask a question, a clarifying question only, not to make a speech, then you raise 2 fingers, and you can ask that person any question as it relates to something that you may have misunderstood about something that they said. We're not going to yell over one another, and we're not going to be disrespectful, even though some people may make comments that we may disagree with. So, hold on, because I'm missing something, y'all. Forgive me. I'm reading the list as it appears in front of me. Okay, so the reason why I bought this topic is actually wasn't my idea. It was something that my nephew said that prompted this meeting, this meeting for today. So if anybody's been paying attention, and you've been paying attention to the politics of New Orleans, you'll know that New Orleans has elected its first Latino mayor. Her name is Helena Moreno. And when she was being inaugurated, my nephew looked at her and said, "She doesn't look Latino to me," which I thought was an interesting idea. So I said to my nephew, I said, "Well, what does she look like?" Big. And my mind started to race and kind of go through some changes. And now I had to ask myself, well, what does a Latino really look like? And so it wasn't me. Y'all have to thank my nephew for the topic for the day because it was his idea based on a comment that he made. And so that is part of the reason why I bought this article, because I had to ask myself, what does a Latino, what does it mean to be Latino or Hispanic, and what does a Latino really look like? The list is open.
Amal, we need to introduce ourselves.
Sure do. I
And you,
apologize.
yes,
No, no, no.
okay. And
Hold on, cause
you call on us.
okay, no problem. I'm going to because I did say I was gonna show my face. So let me do that first. Right there. All right.
Hey.
So being that we are in I ain't gonna say international, but we have spoken internationally to some people where we all across the United States. Phyllis, you want to start us off because I'm only calling the names based on the way they appear to me on the screen here.
Good morning. I'm Phyllis. I'm in New Orleans. I've been coming to Erace since the summer of 2008. Oh,
Chime.
can I say Amal, Marla is sorry she couldn't be here today to
Okay,
this.
no
She
problem.
traveled to see her mom.
All right. All right, timekeeper. Yeah, it's your opportunity to introduce yourself.
It is. I am Louise, and I've been coming to Erase for over 2 decades, first in New Orleans, now in Austin, Texas. And I suggest having a pad and pencil next to you, Amal, in case you haven't, but that helps with writing down names. Anyway.
Yeah, I have one.
Yeah.
Atlanta representation.
Beatrice Suble here in East Point, right outside of Atlanta. So excited. First time of facilitating. Glad to be here. Glad to see everyone.
Thank
Love
you.
you, Amal. Love you. Love you.
All right, and there's no name, but it says iPod on the screen here. So if you want to introduce yourself.
No, I'm sorry. It should be Malcolm, M-A-L, Dr. Malcolm Reed.
It's okay. I was just reading it the way it was. But Dr.
Yeah.
Malcolm Reed, thank you for coming.
Yeah.
And we got Richard in the building. Introduce yourself.
Good morning. It's Richard in the building and in the Irish Channel in somewhat sunny New Orleans. Been with the race since the beginning, early 90s.
Leonetta, can you hear me?
Good morning, everybody. I'm sorry I don't have my face on here because I look a sight and I didn't want to scare anyone. I've been a member of the race since I was an undergrad student at SUNO. And I'm going to just put it this way, I graduated in 2005.
And I'm Amal, and I'll be facilitating today. And I've been coming to racism meetings since 1997.
You forgot Teresa and Glenn.
Teresa and Glenn.
Okay.
Oh, okay. I didn't see anybody else. I'm sorry. Okay, there we go. Introduce yourself, Lady Liberty.
Hi, good morning. I'm Teresa. I've known Malcolm so long. We used to call him Doctor of Love, but that's another story. He got a real recognizable doctorate now. Congratulations. I'm in Fayetteville, North Carolina. I've been coming to Erase since August 2022.
Thank you for coming this morning. Glenn.
Yes, been coming to Erase since 1994. Glad to be here for this historical meeting.
Thank you for being here. Thank you for coming. Thank all of y'all for being here and coming. I appreciate y'all presence. And like I was saying, I'm Amal, and I've been coming since 1997, and I'll be facilitating today. So let's get right to it. As y'all seen, the topic of the thing is so the census will be offering Hispanics as well as North Africans, their own racial category on this up and coming census. And so, how do y'all feel about that? Go ahead, Luis. You're on.
Actually, it's a very quick question because I haven't seen a photograph of the mayor. What does she look like?
Okay, so yeah, I was explaining that. So, according to my nephew, now, like I said, he's the one who inspired this this topic for today. So, because of a question that he asked me. And he didn't ask me a question, he made a statement, and I asked him a question about the statement that he made. And the statement that he made as Helena Moreno was being sworn in is that she doesn't look Latino to me. And so my question to him was, well, then what does she look like if not Latino? He didn't have an answer. He just, in his heart, he was sure Latino wasn't it. And so that prompted me to ask the question as in what does it really mean to be Latino or Hispanic, and what does that look like? Like I said, that on the census, they're offering Hispanics and Latino in the up and coming census. They're offering Hispanics and Latino their own racial category. So they'll be classified as a race, not necessarily as an ethnic group or a culture, as well as people from North Africa and the Middle East.
Okay.
All right, Dr. Malcolm.
Hey, I'm going to do a quick history on something real quick here because I understand what's happening. When I first came to Colorado, I was the director of the first equal opportunity program with the state of Colorado. And at that time, Latinos were considered to be white because there was nothing on the application for a job there. And so they would mark white. At that time, there was no particular other. So I think what has happened over the years, and beside the races, is that a lot of Latinos are very light complected and they look white, and some of their features are somewhat white, and they have actually assimilated into our population in a unique way. So what you're having now is they're trying to separate that. And my concern is the way they're separating it now would be to identify them. And at this time, maybe do the whole thing that we don't want is to have them searching out people to see if they are legal or illegal. So I think that's been an issue. But it also jumps on the other issue of being biracial, because a lot of biracial people, especially a lot of black people who have children and everything that are biracial, and some of them look white, will have the same situation going on. And I don't see anything that says to identify yourself as biracial. I think that when you're looking at all these demographics and you're going to be trying to um, direct your comments toward them or your products, you need to know, because if you're going to be doing it by the way we've done it in the past, we direct our commercials and everything toward the people we want to get. We never say biracial. So biracial could mean black and Hispanic, Hispanic and white, black and white, and we can go on. So um, I think I'm not sure why this is all coming to from the article. I think I understand some of what they're trying to say, but I'm not sure that they reflect it in a way that's possible. That's possible to do something. Thank you.
Thank you. Louise?
Um, yeah, hold on. Let me put my timer on. So yes, I've always had this problem when I'm filling out surveys because I am biracial, and I've if they give a space for an explanation, I always just put Egyptian English. But so yeah, I understand the confusion, and I think Malcolm, that's a great idea. Just put if they could have a section for biracial. Um, I to be honest, and it might be a bit naive, but I don't know fully why, what are their reasons for knowing where everyone is from. But you can correct me, but I'm not too sure about that. Anyway, that's it. Thanks.
All right, we got Teresa, then Beatrice. Teresa.
All right. Yeah, I had to get to my phone. Thank you. So the first thing I thought about when I saw this was, whoa, we're never going to get to the point where we could just be, the box says race and we say human. And at the same time, I understand that people don't want to be lumped in. You want your culture to be respected. You want your this, that, and the other. But I kind of agree with Malcolm that if it's separated out, it's not to acknowledge something positive. As a matter of fact, I think it may feed into the anxiety that white people are going to go extinct and this, that, and the other, the browning of the country. But I remember we had a teacher, and Malcolm, when I describe this, you'll probably remember what teacher. She looked white, but her last name was Middle Eastern because she was half white, and her husband was half white, half Hispanic. He did not look white. Their two daughters look white. And when I read this article, I was just wondering because those girls should be in their 20s by now. And I'm thinking, how has our culture or society changed? Do those two white girls who have, or white appearing, well, they're young women now, do they have to tell potential boyfriends, partners, whatever, of their background? Because that's really when you're going to find out how racist the people are going to be, because they'll treat you one way and then find out, wait a minute, your grandparents are Hispanic, your grandparents are potentially Muslim. I mean, I didn't talk to her about her father's side of the family and what religion they practiced or whatever, but that is a big thing because people almost act like you lied to them because you didn't disclose or what box. But I do remember, and it's so funny because one of the reasons I thought about them is that neither one of them ever checked the box white, even though she would always check something else so she could acknowledge that. And another thing, when I was teaching in Austin, I was very surprised that some of my students checked the box as being white. And I thought, well, you must not be going by skin tone because y'all darker than me. I mean, this is not a conversation I had with them. This was in my mind. I thought it must be one of your parents is white because you would not pass that test. And as I have famously told you all, I was never considered Black in Austin. So thank you.
Welcome, Beatrice.
I think a lot of interesting things are going on with the census. One is that they're trying to they're trying to add the question about citizenship, which of course is not legal. The census is supposed to take account of every person in the country, not citizen or not. So that would be wrong. But this article, Middle Eastern and North Africans, it would be 7 to 8 million people no longer identifying as white. Or other. It's interesting that these people who want to not see the browning of America, which is clearly happening, would allow a question that would take a whole category of people out of whiteness. They must not be thinking clearly. The other thing is the Office of Management and Budget. They're saying the reason they're doing this is to understand how our federal agencies are serving diverse America. Please, we just finished with this all DEI stuff. What are you talking about? Are y'all in another planet? You don't care how you serve in diverse populations. So there's something else going here, like Malcolm said, and Louise agreeing. There's something under this. But I thought that was very interesting. The other interesting point for me, we're collecting data about the descendants of slaves, but it says they didn't agree on how to collect the information. Okay, so how can you collect something you don't agree how to collect it? I mean, what? So we're in a place where we are just scattered when it comes to dealing with the browning of America, dealing with how do you operate, how do we have a comprehensive immigration policy that is not border control and is not just gathering people and dragging them to detention facilities where they don't get enough food, where they are, some of them in isolation. So this article brought up a lot of stuff for me, and I thought a couple of things that I mentioned were quite telling that we don't know where we're going with this stuff. I think something, like they say, something broke in some white people when Barack Obama was when they played Hail to the Chief and a black man walk out. They never got over it. They have never healed. Thank you.
And the list is open. Dr. Malcolm. You're muted. You're muted.
Again, I find it interesting that this is coming up now. I guess I'm trying to figure out what we're trying to deflect from by bringing this up now, and other than the fact that we're trying to change boundaries and districts and throughout the country and different states and changing red to blue or blue to red or whatever we're trying to do. But it still boils to the fact that there's got to be an underlying factor beside what we're seeing in this article that I think that's not being really expressed the way it should be, or is there the whole thing of trying to filter out and figure out who is who, where they're from, and at that time have an idea of where you want to go. That's all I can say right now.
Right. Janetta.
Yes, I'm with Beatrice. I don't understand why they didn't think it's true. They're taking a whole bunch of white people out of the white category. And that's a fear of some white people in America that white people are being replaced, the great replacement theory. And uh, the purpose of the census is for representation in Congress. That's what I was taught in civics class. And evidently it's going to be, that's why you're doing the racial categories to make sure that every race is represented in Congress, to make sure that all voices are heard. Now that's what's supposed to be happening. Now what's happening now? Why they going this specific? I don't know. I think there's a big plan behind this, and I don't think it's good for nobody. That's Lynnetta's opinion. Thank you.
Thank you. The list is open. But now that the list is open, I'm going to read, if y'all give me a minute, a definition. So because I think sometimes the two words Hispanic and Latino can get overlapped, and sometimes people think that they can mean the same thing about the same person or peoples. So Hispanic is emphasized Spanish language and culture, including Spain. It was popularized, ironically, by the U.S. Census in the 1970s. So before the 1970s, that means that this term Hispanic did not exist. There was no such word to describe peoples. And then the Latino emphasizes geographic origin in Latin America, including Brazil, which is Portuguese speaking, not Spanish speaking. So you can be Brazilian and be Latino, but you can't be Brazilian and be Hispanic, because Brazilian is not a Spanish speaking culture. And so including Brazil and usually Haiti, which is French speaking. So you can be Latino and be Haitian, which is French speaking, but it's not Spanish speaking. And then, but excludes Spain because Spain is a Spanish speaking country. It's not geographically located in Latin America. And is often considered more inclusive of indigenous or non-Spanish speaking Latin American roots. So you can be Hispanic and not necessarily be Latino, and you can be Latino and not necessarily be Hispanic. And then sometimes you can be both depending on where you're born. So, but anyway, Dr. Malcolm, I didn't want to interrupt. I just wanted to give some clarity to those definitions.
That's fine. And the definition is good. But I'm going to throw another rock in the on the water. If you go below Mexico City, the Mexicans down below Mexico City are so dark you would think they're black. And it's because the Moors went through that area back in the day. And there you had the darkness that you see a lot of Latinos or Mexicans who come up from under Mexico City, and they're just as dark as they wanted to be, and people trying to figure out who they are. But my other concern is going to be now, where are you going to put your Puerto Ricans now? See, there's Puerto Ricans in New York who speak Spanish, and there's Puerto Ricans in New York that are basically Mexican. And then you have to deal with the Chicanos, which is part of the Mexican Indian heritage and breakdown. So somehow or another, we're starting to trying to figure out all these categories they're putting people in. You know, it becomes a thing where a friend of mine was talking about a certain person was on the swimming team at a school here, and they said, "Well, yeah, you know." They were the first black person on that team. And I said, "Oh, really?" And they said, "Well, here's a picture, big picture of him." I couldn't find the person. Now they were so like they could pass. So now this person has been going through school passing, of course, and they just figured it all out. So you got this thing that we've got parents who are playing the game too. We don't want to be distinguished. We want to be able to slide through this thing and give you all the opportunities that's necessary for you to survive and be someone. So I guess I'm concerned about playing those games that we're trying to play with numbers. That's all.
I think Louise
Thanks.
had a clarifying question for you.
Yes, I did. What do you mean the Puerto Ricans can be Mexicans? Did you say that?
Yeah, well, they can speak. They don't. Some of them speak Spanish, and some of them speak the lingua of Mexico.
Isn't that Spanish though?
No, not always.
Oh.
Yeah, it's the mixture of it because when I noticed it when I was in the military, there were guys who were coming from New York who were Puerto Ricans, and they didn't speak the same language.
Huh. Okay. I just learned something. Thank you.
Yeah, sure. Glad to offer that information to you. I'm sending it to you free.
Thank you.
Richard, I thought I saw your finger up. You're muted.
There we go. Is it Mr. Thomas that was speaking before Louise? I wanted to get that
Dr. Malcolm?
iPad there. I wanted to respond. What is it?
Dr. Malcolm?
Dr. Malcolm, I'm sorry. Let me write it down. When Dr. Malcolm talked about was it the swimmer that and put it in the context that it appeared that the parents and that the fellow that was quote passing for white was deliberately doing it to be part of the team and to not distinguish himself outwardly distinguish himself as African American. I mean, that's the kind of presumption that I think obscures this whole issue about how we identify ourselves, and the whole problem about, you've heard me talk about this ad nauseum, is that this gets back to the problem of using the color of our skin, regardless of how other people use color against us, but using the color of our skin to self-identify. And I think this gets at the whole, this article, Amal, kind of exemplifies the whole issue. It's conflating color with ethnicity, with race. And I think as Teresa is open with her discussion is when you get right down to it, and we've talked about that race is a social construct, the only race is, quote, the human race. And regardless of how much that other folks try to use race and to separate us, uh, particularly when it's race based on color, that as I've said many, many times, we are defeating ourselves in any attempt at reconciliation by using color at all in our discussion. I'll get back to talk about it more.
All right, thank you. You want to get back on the list, or you want to be
For now, I'll stay off the list.
okay? Beatrice.
Just a couple of things. One of them is that I know in my brain that race is a social construct. I've read it. We've all read it. We know it is true. But since the days of our coming on these shores and somebody deciding that we needed to have a way, they needed to have a way to separate people so that power could be exerted on a group of people. Race has been here. And race colors, pardon that, everything in the country. The idea of white supremacy, the idea of power. So we are correct that this is a social construct, and I would hope that in a millennium, I don't know how many years from now, we would be at a point where we could say we are a human race, and that is more important than anything. I would hope that that would be. The other thing I want to say has to do with the whole idea of a census and what is behind wanting to know who the people are, what is behind counting people. It is supposed to be to allocate resources to districts that need those resources from the federal government. That is supposed to be the reason for it. And if that is the reason for it, then every move, every change needs to be related to how do we better fix that? How do we make sure that people who need the resources of this federal government receive them? And if that is not what this is about, if that is not the basis on which decisions are being made, something needs to be fixed, and we need to see about it. And somebody with a good heart and a good moral spine in the federal government needs to see about it and be sure that we are making changes that will affect the people in this country positively. So the people who suffer immensely and the people who are getting more hurt by policies do not get hurt more.
Thank you. All right, the list is as follows. We have Teresa and Luis. Anybody else? Dr. Malcolm. So we got Teresa, Luis, Dr. Malcolm.
Yeah. When and it's too bad I'm not living in Texas because I would have heard more about this. But when the Pentagon shot down a U.S. Border Patrol drone, I'm not even on social media, but I still heard that people are like, okay, now that the United States have attacked itself, can we bring DEI back? And I absolutely loved that, of course, because the haphazard way that Doge happened and, all this, oh, you only got there because you're a woman or because you're black or because you're da 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 da. It's like, okay, so firing all those people and mass exodus, apparently it wasn't just because of the box that was checked. Apparently there were some really competent people. And speaking of an incompetent person who was just fired, yay, but her replacement is like, ooh, okay. I didn't even know that guy was WWF, but that does make sense why he challenged in a Senate hearing a guy to, stand up and wrestle until Brother Bernie Sanders said, gentlemen, we can't do that. And, it just kind of reminds me of what I see happening politically in this country are things that I would never tolerate in my students in my classroom. And when you look toward leadership, you want something to say, well, you can never be blah, blah. Yes, you can now. The bar is so low. It's really, political clout more so than competence. And that just drives me nuts because I was raised to work twice as hard so I can get half as far. And it's like, why should I work hard? I should just manipulate people. I mean, I don't have the money to do that. So, nobody has to worry about me making a move, but it surely is not based on competence. It should no longer be based on race. But when you're talking about going toward, these categories, racial categories, that is perpetuated by the Orange Menace. And isn't it funny? People had a problem with a man of color, and here's a man who has many colors: his purple hands, his cotton candy colored hair during the State of the Union. And no, I didn't listen to it, but I still saw the pictures. So thank you.
Luis?
My question is just, why would knowing your race or your color help you get benefits? Like you say, Beatrice, the reason for them doing that, is to find out where you're from so they could get resources to you. But I don't understand how that would help. I mean, I'm most probably ignorant, but I just don't understand that correlation. That was it. It was just I don't understand that, why that would matter. What your race or culture is. That was it. Sorry.
Dr. Malcolm?
All I'm going to say is that I think that we need to understand that we've now reached an area or a time when there's such a fear that that one race is going to get more than the other race, and that we're going to continue to say that immigrants are getting more than anybody else or are getting more than we are. And once they divide us, it becomes very clear that we're going to have problems. So all I want to say to that is we must educate ourselves and educate our children, grandchildren, great grandchildren, all that, that if we are going to make it in this world, we're going to have to learn how to get along with each other and accept each other for what they are, where they are. It's sad in some ways is that in this whole battle, the Jewish problem hasn't come up again, which normally just drops in this whole thing. Is that okay? Uh, the Jewish community now is a separate community too. So now should you have on that beside all the different classifications, Jews? Anyone who is Jewish, should they now be put on that list? Oh, wow, that's something. I can remember it being in Baton Rouge in the late middle 70s, and I had a great group of people who saw me on one side of the street. I was walking toward them, and they crossed over. And then I was told those were Creoles. Oh, okay, now we got another group of people. Eventually, this thing gets starting to get thinned out to where the only people who really matter are going to be white people, because the rest of us are going to be in all these different categories, and then what do we do?
All right, the list is open. Richard?
Okay, again, following up on Dr. Malcolm's comments, I think it's, again, this category of what white people are going to do when, with all these other categories being thrown at us, and the tying in with the issue of, quote, the browning of America. It gets back to another issue that I brought up before that I think directly relates to this whole census issue, is that The only place that I have seen the word white capitalized in any context is actually in the census article, meaning that white for the census purposes is described as a quote, oh, you name it. Is it ethnic? Is it racial? That's the whole issue. Whiteness is a chimera. It's smoke and mirrors. Yes, it's been around for 3, 4, 500 years, that concept, and it's been used to subjugate African Americans. It's been used to justify enslavement. It's been used to justify superiority. That that doesn't give the word whiteness any credibility. It's I happen to be reading a book, Black Elk Speaks, and I know there's some issues with the authenticity of what Black Elk actually said, but there's actually a term that at least the Sioux Indians used to talk about the invaders of their land. And they talked about the invaders of their land not in terms of color, but this is a term that some of you may have heard of, and I'll spell it. It's Wasichus. The spelling varies a little bit in some places, but it's Wasishus. And this, and Black Elk and others have talked about the invaders of their land. And this gets back to the whole issue of talking about class rather than race in terms of talking about subjugation. But the whole concept of the Wasishus was not color, according to definitions that I've read and following up on this word. It's about the exploitation of one group against another. But the Sioux wisely did not regard them in terms of, quote, white. They were Wasishus, which were basically land imperialists, which I think is a very legitimate way to think about, a lot of our European um, ancestors. But that's not a white issue.
Thank you. Teresa. The list is Teresa, Glenn. Anybody else? All right.
Yeah. Malcolm, when you said the Jewish problem, it just reminds me of that whole time before I was born, where it was always the Negro question or the Negro problem or the blah, blah, blah. And it was in terms of white supremacy. And I always, because I wasn't alive, but reading that, I just find it so funny, I guess in a sick way, but so funny that I just imagine white people at that time who would question or would even say, well, what about the Negro question? Or that they're like, what are we going to do with all these N words? That's the only question. Because to me, because I wasn't during the time, it's like, really, y'all only have one question about us and it wasn't about the hair? Because that's the question I get more often is about my hair. And I still don't know how to categorize Jews. I mean, it's interesting that you said separate them from whites, although I suspect sometimes it's convenient to be to pass. I mean, I'll tell you, I thought Austin was a more progressive city, and then I come to find out, no, they didn't know I was Black. So just that palpable feeling of I don't have extra stress that I can walk up to a police officer and ask a question without them, doing the stereotypical of, oh, I've got a Black person approaching me. I mean, it's not so much how you see the world, but how the world sees you. And then it's like, wow, this is a more. And then I was very disappointed to learn otherwise about Austin because you think of it as keep Austin weird. It's this liberal whatever. No, it's not. Especially if you are visibly darker skinned, it is not, and male. That's one of the reasons why my cousin and her husband left because he just couldn't take it anymore. They bought into the hype of, oh, she herself. I mean, I would say that they're both pretty dark skinned, whatever, but she's this very petite, really, really cute looking Black woman. So, no, she's not going to be harassed. But boy, he's Mr. I go to the gym frequently. And that's something that Texas does not want to see is a big, strong Black man walking around, and this guy's an engineer. So, very smart, very like, nah, we don't want this guy. And they did relocate back to Atlanta because just could not take that. So it's really not even if you have success and confidence and whatever, it's still how you're treated, how you're seen.
All right. So now the list is Glenn, Dr. Malcolm, and Beatrice, and Phyllis.
Okay. Now, choosing a race, you know, a black man now can say he's a white man. He belongs to the white race. Uh, uh, you know, in the time that I was born and born during the Jim Crow era, I had an African American family on my block that passed for white. The the privilege that went with that was very valuable. When you know it gave you a whole lot in the society to be classified as white. But ever since civil rights, that's been eroding. Uh, the uh, the uh, I don't think people gonna want to rush to be calling themselves white, and it's evident that they're not. Just to looking for a privilege that won't be there. The privileges are gone. Very little is the privileges is it's not as great as it's really been diminished what privilege you get for saying you're white. I'll just leave it at that.
Thank you.
Mm.
Next on the list, Dr. Malcolm.
Hey, let me just say this. If you're not understanding when the president says to you, the worst thing to happen to white people was the passing of the Civil Rights Act. That's one. You have another senator who steps out, and I think his representative steps out in the crowd and says, well, during the time that people weren't going to get their paychecks during the shutdown, he said, well, I guess those people, especially on Social Security and SNAP benefits and all that, he said, well, I guess they won't be able to get their extensions done. Okay. Now, if that hasn't identified who and what we're doing and where we're at, and yet somebody trying to basically say, hey, now, let me just put it a different way. If you continue to think that you're not going to be identified as something, you're lost the whole meaning of what we're going through, because we're going to always be identified. And there's no way to get around it. I walk down the street, I'm identified as a dark black male. Good looking, but dark black male. That's where I want to put it.
All right, next on the list is Beatrice.
Amal, I love you. It's Beatrice. It's hard for people, especially
Wait. Say it for me again.
Okay, Beatrice.
Beatrice.
Yeah, thank you, baby. Thank you.
All right, got
it. Thank you, dog. Now, this is kind of tangential to the whole conversation, but when we were growing up in New Orleans, there was a whole category of people called Passant Blanc. These are people who could pass for white.
Yes.
We knew them. We black people knew them, baby. And they were able to work in places like D.H. Holmes, Maison Blanche, because they were able to be salespeople because they were passing for white. And when we would go in the store, you wouldn't out them. We knew who they were. We had a guy who went to school with us, the very same elementary school, junior high school. We get on the bus, we would sit behind the screen, he would sit in the front of the screen, and we would just pass by, and we wouldn't say nothing to him. Hey, Michael, how you doing, baby? What you sitting up there? No, we didn't say anything. Just interesting. I mean, we lived with this. We knew this. They knew that we knew who they were, but the privileges that accrued to them because of being white at that time in New Orleans were great. in terms of employment, and if you like riding in the front of the bus or rather than standing up in the back. And it was a category of people, passant blanc. We knew that they were passing for white, and it was their desire to do so. Just a memory that came to me, tangential to the whole conversation, but just a memory.
Yeah, my grandmother was one of those people, my father's mother. Phyllis?
Since we started out, I'm all saying that this came from his nephew's statement about Helena Moreno. I looked her up a minute ago, and I didn't realize she was actually born in Mexico. She's from Veracruz. She wasn't born in the States, but her family moved here to Texas initially. And then I was thinking, Cameron Diaz, that actress, her father's side of the family is Cuban via Spain. So some of what makes somebody look Hispanic or Latino, I think in our minds, is dark hair and dark eyes and maybe a darker skin. But in the case of Cameron Diaz, her mother is not Cuban heritage. And hair dye exists. So
Yeah.
anybody can be blonde or lighter haired who wants to be. And I think the looks, I think we have to be careful about assuming things about people based on their looks, because I'm, as I've said, the whitest white who ever whited based on my DNA results. But that doesn't mean people have a right to say something racist in my presence and expect me to agree with them, because they'll be very quickly corrected. But I also want to say about the Middle Eastern or North African as race category, it's interesting because if I can use you as an example, Louise, could you be African American and Caucasian, biracial? In my mind, I think African Americans are people. It designates people who were brought. Their ancestors were brought to this country enslaved. That's what it means to me. English, as you said, is actually not a race. It's part of the Caucasian race. But I don't agree that somebody from North Africa should be considered African American unless somehow they were born here and went there and were part of an enslaved group and then their family moved back. It's all very complicated, and I think culture is also a big part of what we're talking about. Sorry for going over my time.
Thank you for that information. We have Teresa, then Louise.
And Richard.
And Rich. Got it.
Hi, I just wanted to chime in. When I was teaching in Egypt, I taught in Alexandria, Egypt, so off the coast of the Mediterranean. One of my students was talking about, and she was Egyptian, but she was a lighter skinned Egyptian. She was talking about a darker skinned Egyptian who was poor. Okay. And she used the word African as if it was a racial slur. And I looked at her and I said, but you're also African. I said, Egypt is. And no, she corrected me and said, I'm Egyptian. I'm not African. And I was like, I'm not going to get in a debate with this child because I know what continent we're both on. But there is a mindset that Egypt is sometimes considered. And I even had this with an American friend who's intelligent, well-read, blah, 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 blah. Also, in his mind, Egypt wasn't Africa. It was part of the Middle East. And I was like, well, it's not even geographically located. So when you think about these categories and who, this, what, and whatever, I just think, and yeah, I was teaching at a highly privileged private school because, as I always say, I don't go to other people's countries to be poor. I could be poor in my own country. If I'm going to go to, if I'm going to be a teacher in another country, I'm going to be getting top dollar and whatnot. But I found that was very interesting how my Egyptian student did not see herself as African and thought of negative connotations and of course, I'm not saying this about the entire whatever of Egyptian people. I'm saying specifically how that student's mindset. And when I tried to point out to her, you are living in an African country, you know, North Africa is perceived differently as sub Saharan Africa. So I would just want to offer that. I don't know how the attitudes have changed because I lived there, early 2000s. So there has been some decades that passed.
All right, Luis, you're next.
Well, to hop on that, Teresa, my dad was of the mindset, and of course he was old school anyway, but he was very light skinned, and he was also a complete bigot and racist. And he would say that if you were darker skinned, from lower Egypt near the Sudan, he wouldn't even say the poorer people, he would call them peasants. Yeah, he was a complete, can't say that on here. Anyway, so yeah, even though there are some Egyptians who are blue-eyed and blonde hair. I mean, it's a really light skin, and so the further down in Egypt you go, then the darker skin. But yeah, there is definitely that mindset that yes, I'm Egyptian, not African, but it's a load of bollocks because obviously they're in Africa. I mean, all of those North African countries, it's African, it's Africa. So, and I don't want to be called an African American because I'm not really American. So take that away, please.
You're not illegal. You're not illegal here, are you?
No,
that's a joke.
We're being taped here, brother. Come on. No,
joke.
I'm legally here, but I'm not a citizen. I didn't pledge allegiance to any country, especially the one that does this. Thank you very much, Amal. Yeah. All right, that's it. Thanks.
Richard, you're next.
Okay, I think I'll start this discussion in the context of trying to tie in the comment by our president, a race president whose name I just lost, about whether Louise would be considered African American or whether she wants to identify as that, and she just indicated she prefer not to. But I think tying in Jesse
Only
Jackson.
Only the American part.
That's right. Good point. I'm glad you clarified that. But tying all this in with the loss of, the great civil rights leader, Jesse Jackson, who we've been understandably celebrating his life for the last week, or at least many of us have been. I believe it was Jesse Jackson, I could be corrected, who, if not creating, at least popularized the term African American as a counter or an alternative to using the word Black. And I think that kind of resonates with the discussion I've been trying to have all along about moving away from color. But my mother, and I'm trying to remember the year that Jesse Jackson ran for president under the Rainbow Coalition banner. My mother, who almost always followed my father, who voted liberally Democrat in that election, said, I'm voting for Jesse Jackson this time. And that really surprised me because it was the first time that she actually broke away from my father in terms of voting a straight Democratic ticket. And what Jesse Jackson did back in the Rainbow Coalition, yes, rainbow based on colors, of course, there's always a contradiction. But I think he struck a chord with people like my mother who really talked about superseding the issue of color and race to come together to fight for it. I think back then it was economic issues and subjugation that struck a chord with people like my mother, who otherwise would have voted the traditional Democratic line. So kudos to Jesse Jackson for introducing African American.
Thank you for that. Now, Teresa, you still had your hand up. Did you want to speak, or did you neglect to take it down from the last time?
Glenn has his hand up too.
I know that. I see his.
Sorry, I forgot to take it down. I thought
Okay.
it would automatically go down as I was talking.
Okay, so no, then Glenn's next then.
Yes, the one who started the African American is Thurgood Marshall. Now, I did not vote for Jesse Jackson, and I didn't I didn't think he was ready for prime time, ready for that position. I think he was qualified. I don't think the one we got now is qualified. But you know, from the outhouse to the White House, you know, yeah, he wasn't ready. And but when I heard Obama, when he just gave his speech at the Democratic convention, he was not a candidate. I said he should have been the one that should have selected. That it was this other guy who was actually running for the president. But yeah, that's my feeling. I didn't I think I was humiliated by the things that Jesse Jackson did. Operation Breadbasket, going around begging white folks. You know, I came from the Nation of Islam. Our belief was do something for yourself, have some dignity. So that's my feelings about Jesse Jackson. That's it.
And the list is officially open. If I could add some context to something as it relates to we were talking about the North African countries, and Teresa was saying that the Egyptian young lady, if I'm not mistaken, that she was talking to said that she wasn't African, but she was Egyptian. Do you think she meant that although I'm not an African, I'm and because Egypt is a part of the Arab League, do you think that she meant she was Arab and not African? Even though Egypt is in the on the continent of Africa.
She definitely didn't use the word Arab. I mean, an Arab is somebody who speaks Arabic. So, and she spoke, the vast majority of my students were at least bilingual. So Arab, I mean, we did have some Greek students who were trilingual, actually. They could speak Arabic, English, and Greek. But the tone of voice at which she said that referred to somebody poor and dark skinned as being African, it was derogatory. And she definitely wanted to posit herself above that. And Louise, I just have to tease you because, historically, you said down south near the Sudan, that's Upper Egypt because the way the Nile flows. And I was like, ooh, I get to correct somebody of Egyptian descent. I love it. I love it. Just like when I told my students who were struggling in my algebra class, I was like, I'm teaching you a part of your culture, so you should embrace this since I'm teaching you algebra. But yeah. But no, she was using that word African as derogatory, and and to tell another, I think I told this story about another Egyptian student. He thought because he was, in his opinion, so light skinned in Egyptian society that if he came to the States, he'd be passed for white. I laughed and I said, "You would be considered Puerto Rican." I was like, nobody would ever think that you were Egyptian. I said, the stereotype is true. If you're not riding down the street on a camel, I said, even so, I didn't think about that then, but even so, average American would think, why is that Puerto Rican riding down the street on a camel? Nobody would pick him out for being Egyptian. But it is just really interesting. And maybe because that school was very, wealthy, that they had that.
I think Louise has a clarifying question.
Well,
Rebuttal.
not a clarifying question, but just in my defense, I meant lower meaning south. I should have just said southern, I guess, but
I
lower
know, but that's
on the
still
map.
Upper Egypt. That's still Upper Egypt. The southern part of Egypt is considered
I just meant
historically.
geographically.
Oh, I know.
Okay.
Because the Nile flows from south to north instead of north to south.
Okay.
All right, so I won't mess this up again. I'm gonna say Miss
beer.
Miss Suble. Can I do that?
Yeah, baby, that's fine. And I just tell people just say like beer, like a glass of beer, if that's fine, darling. Look, I just bless your heart. Just want to just say this. The term African American was not coined by a single individual, but has its roots all the way back to 1782 in a sermon and a pamphlet in Philadelphia. Jesse Jackson did not coin the phrase, but he's credited with popularizing it. So that's why we associate it with Jesse in the late 1980s as an alternative, like Richard said, to Black, to emphasize cultural heritage. I just wanted to say that, to read that. Okay.
All right then. So now the time is according to my computer, it may be a little different in different areas. But I have 11:10 a.m. because I'm about 30 minutes outside of New Orleans, or 45 minutes. So I have 11:10. And no one else is on the list, so we could start the wrap up right now. And I'll call, and during the wrap up, for those who haven't spoken, you get 2 minutes. And for those who have spoken already, you get one. And so the only person that I see that has not spoken is, okay, now, according to the way it appears on my computer, it is FABC Spanish. I'm not sure who that is.
I think that's Marion. See if that's Marion.
That person
Marion
has.
Lagarde.
Yeah, that's Marion.
Marion
That's
Lagarde.
me, Amal. I
Okay.
tried to change the name.
No.
and
That's
I
fine.
couldn't.
I just, you don't have to change anything. I was just saying you hadn't spoken yet, and
Mhm.
you get 2 minutes. So if you want to take those 2 minutes right now and speak,
Sure.
it's yours.
It's so nice to see you, Amal.
Likewise.
It was just great. The topic is very profound, and it couldn't come at a better time in this country's history because of the divisiveness. And I'd like to say I went through a situation when I was at Xavier University of being shunned. And I was actually told by someone that I trusted and had a rather friendly relationship with that it was because I was too dark. There were three girls in our division of the elementary education department who were also shunned because it was, as Malcolm had said earlier, uh, they were Creole girls. And there was only one girl in the group who did not act in that negative way toward us. And it wasn't until my senior year that she really called it out. And she told the girls when we were at lunch one day, I wasn't eating with the group. They all would congregate to themselves. Uh, this nonsense is going to stop. We are all human beings. And this was way back in the 1960s when things started to change. But I felt the brunt of that foolishness, of being ignored. As I said, was along two other girls in the group that were obviously of the African so-called American persuasion. And I remember hearing a conversation about 10 years after that when things where the civil rights movement had taken shape and really caused some change. And I heard them in the department store saying, "I'm so glad this foolishness is over." But it was a very ugly time, I'll tell you. And I think Beatrice knows what I'm talking about. To be among people who shunned you because the creator decided he wanted diversity among his creations. So there's still, I think, some people that have that attitude that hold that against you. And I've always thought it was just downright stupid to think that you're more superior. And we know why it's been addressed. But there's so much other stuff that we have to overcome. So I want to thank you for this topic,
Thank you. Thank you for your time.
surely.
All right, everybody else will be getting 1 minute, and we'll start with Miss Suble. Because I don't want to mess it up. I just,
I'm so sorry. Look, my this is gonna take up my whole minute. My grandfather, when he married my grandmama, he said, if our first child is a girl, I want you to name after my last girlfriend. So his last girlfriend's name was Beatrice. And so my grandma said, well, okay then, but she must never be called Beatrice. So that's how it all started, baby. That's how it started. Anyway, I'm sorry. I love you, baby. Look, it was a wonderful topic and first time facilitator, baby, you on it. Thank you. Thank you for a stellar job. Enjoyed the conversation with everybody. Welcome back, Marion. Richard, you told me you missed her, and I called her right away and told her you missed her, and there she is. Thanks, everybody. Thanks again, Amal. You were fantastic.
Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, Louise.
Totally just agree with everything she said. You've done a great job, man. I mean, so good. And I wanted to show you this. Oh my God, sorry. This picture of my grandmother, grandfather, and my baby, my dad as a baby. I don't know if this is gonna show up here, but look,
Yeah, they look like a Creole family from New Orleans.
they really do, don't they?
Yeah.
But yeah, it's beautiful looking. She actually died very, very young, in a fire, saving someone, going back into the fire to save someone. Anyway, so yeah, the looks very light skinned, but definitely a mix, and they're not white.
Yeah.
Great topic, great conversation. So you're going to be doing facilitating from now on, right?
I'll do it again. I don't have a problem with doing it again.
Yay!
Teresa?
Yes, thanks for this topic. I'm glad we had a livelier conversation than what I thought we would about checking boxes on the census. So and I think the census was just I'm interested. I was interested to learn that we do the census for allocations of funds in different groups, because I thought the basis of the census was purely to say, oh, we need these many representatives, and because we're including the slaves as 3/5 of the population. But that's what I think of the census. I don't think of it as modern day, and it looks like we're going so backwards, maybe. But anyway, thank you for the topic.
You're very welcome. Thank you. Glenn?
Yes, I agree with everyone. You did an excellent job. I can see you can have a podcast. You got that kind of voice and
Yeah.
charisma to open up a podcast. Yeah, I thought it was very interesting, and but I'm not having any fear of what that's going to do. Uh, I just hope that African Americans take the census more serious than what they take it. A lot of them don't fill out the census, and it does mean money and representation. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Richard?
I'll echo everybody else. Thanks for a great job and great topic, Amal. And thank you, Beatrice, for bringing Marion back in for this discussion. Both of you, your childhood experiences growing up in New Orleans from the very beginning have brought so much to this discussion and given me a lot to think about. And as I've said often, I'll never be able to walk in your shoes as African Americans or certainly as women. But I would just say, in terms of the specific topic, if we were to follow the lead on this way this is going, I would say replace white with Italian American, Greek American, French American, go down about the 20 European countries. That would solve the problem of the ambiguous quote white. Let's hyphenate everybody's ethnicity, and we'll be sure to include everybody. And who knows, it might be for the better. So thanks for the discussion, and great to hear you again, Marion.
Thank you. Phyllis?
Well, I want to say this was a good article, an excellent discussion. I appreciate you, Amal, providing those definitions that you provided. Also, thank you, nephew. And I'm sorry he left, but I appreciate Malcolm's knowledge and wisdom that he contributed as well. So yeah, we have maybe people signed up for April, but we'll get with you about May.
Okay, no problem. Leonetta?
You, first of all, you did a good job. I love you picked the article, and I just want to share with everybody experience I had that colorism is alive and well in New Orleans. I went to Norman Francis's viewing because he and my dad were peers and they were friends. So I went to the viewing, and as people were going in, they were handing out ribbons to the alumni. The lady in front of me was light complexion. They asked her, was she an alumni? And they gave her a ribbon. They looked at me. The next was our alumni now.
Whoa.
So I just want to tell you it's alive and well in New Orleans.
Wow.
Wow. Anyway, well, this is the opportunity for me to kind of chime in. So like I said, it was my nephew who inspired this article by a comment that he made. And when he made the comment that Helena Moreno did not look Latino to him, it caused my mind to kind of jog and ask myself even, what does that really mean? And so I did some research and I've been looking around. As far as a phenotype, there is no Latino Hispanic phenotype. Doesn't exist. And I know a lot of people want to know how and why. Well, this is why you come to these meetings, so that we can help educate one another. So I'll give you an example of two people who will be considered Puerto Rican. There's a famous baseball player. His name is Roberto Clemente. Very, very popular baseball player. As a matter of fact, I believe he was in the major leagues before Jackie Robinson was, or around about that same time. And he's Puerto Rican. The man is just as dark skinned as Jackie Robinson is, for those who may know how Jackie Robinson looked. He's Puerto Rican. And when I say he's Puerto Rican, I mean born there, raised there, has a lineage there that goes back hundreds of years. Roberto Clemente. Then there's a very famous singer, a gentleman by the name of Ricky Martin. Had a very popular song called Living Ma Vida Loca. Ricky Martin is Puerto Rican, but no one is going to convince me that Ricky Martin and Roberto Clemente comes from the same people, come from the same cultural background, meaning they were both born and raised in Puerto Rico on that island. But both of these men will be considered Latino based on this census understanding of that definition. But you're not going to convince me since the census is saying they're changing Hispanic and Latino to a racial category, you're not going to convince me that these two men come from the same race. That would be like saying, if you want, that'll be like if you're classifying American as a race now, that would be like saying that me and David Duke would be from the same race of people. And we're not. So Roberto Clemente, there was a famous singer from Cuba. What was her name? Oh wow, I can't believe her name slipped my mind just that fast. She was a very popular singer from Cuba. I can't remember. Cecilia Cruz. Cecilia Cruz is a black woman, but she's Cuban. So I'm a little distraught to say that if you're going to start classifying Latino and Hispanic as a racial category, then you're going to lose a lot of people who don't who 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 may not fit into the way you're defining this racial category on the U.S. Census. So that's one idea. Another thing is that there was a very popular um, psychologist. Her name was Dr. Frances Cress Welsing, and one of her teachers was a gentleman by the name of Dr. Neely Fuller. And he said that one of his popular sayings is that if you don't understand racism, white supremacy, then everything else you think you understand will only confuse you. I understand, Richard, what you mean by these categories of white and black and these social constructs of race. I agree with that. But these social construct of race dictates the narrative of the way this society is ran. I'm not saying that that's right. I'm saying we have to be conscious of that reality, because if I go somewhere not conscious of the fact that I'm a black man, I can end up in a sundown town and dead. So I have to be conscious of race every time I walk outside of my door. And I cannot play that game of, well, what, in other words, racism, white supremacy don't break me down into little categories. In other words, they're not good. All they see is a black man. They don't see, I could be Jamaican, I could be Haitian, I could be Puerto Rican or Cuban, I could be from Brazil, I could be from the UK, I could be from anywhere in Africa. But all races and white supremacy see when I'm walking down the street as a black man, and it doesn't break me down into little categories, because that's the way race work. It's how you appear. Unfortunately, that's just the way it works. And I'm not saying that that's right. And I do think that people should be fighting against that. But right now, we have to be conscious of that reality, or else it could get people killed who try not to recognize that reality. As it relates to North Africa, when you look at the North African countries, and I'm talking about from Morocco all the way over to Egypt, Tunisia, Libya, Algeria, so on and so forth, militarily and politically, these countries are ran by Arabs. Anybody know what the legal name of Egypt is? I mean, if you type it's Egypt is not the legal, it's not the political name of Egypt. That's more like a geographical name. But if you looked up the political name of Egypt, it's the Arab Republic of Egypt, or something like that, because it's an Arab ran country. And so a lot of those people in North Africa, they are not African people. Those are Arabs. They just came into Africa and they never left. Just like the white people in South Africa. They're not African. They're just Europeans who came and ain't never left. And so that's where I think the confusion comes in at, because if there's a North African, since North African Middle Eastern is going to be classified as a race, then what about the North Africans, the Berbers, and so on and so forth, who look like me? Where does that leave them? Would they be classified away from the African population and into that North African Arab population that people talk about, this is where these type of things get a little sketchy and funny at, because there are no clear definitions when you're dealing in a society that wants to divide human beings up into these little racial categories. The definitions are never clear. Like I said, I had a grandma who, like Miss Suble so eloquently put, is passant blanc. My grandmother could have passed for white if she chose to. My father's mother. Now, that's a little difficult to do when your husband looks like me, but nevertheless, she could have, and none of her sisters did. And I have relatives on that side of my family that if I was standing in the mix of them, you would wonder how I fit, because I don't look like them. That's how light skinned they are. Now, some of them, you better not tell them that they're not black, because it could cause a problem for you. But nevertheless, if they were walking down the street and I'm walking down the street and you had to identify the black person, I would be the one that people would point to, not them. This is why I say this thing called race is a social construct, and it could get very funny and very sketchy. And there's the one drop rule and who the brown paper bag. It's a whole lot of little factors that you can dive into. But nevertheless, as it relates to this census, I think that there's some political motivations involved in this that people can't see. And it might not play itself out, being that this is the first time that they've done this. Just like with the word Hispanic, that was introduced to the census in the 1970s. It might take a few years before we can see how this is going to play itself out, and that's not good. But anyway, I digress. And thank y'all for listening. Thank y'all for taking the time out to lend me y'all ears. I'll land my plane right there.